thank you. Summer travel season is upon us. That means bigger crowds and more chaos. Here to tell us not where to go this summer, but how to avoid travel stress is Brandon Blewett, the author of How to Avoid Strangers on Airplanes, a survival guide for the frequent business traveler. Thanks for being here. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
Of course. So, okay, tell us about your book. You mentioned not to book earlier, but kind of book smarter. What does that mean?
I think one of the things that people can do is when you do have an idea of when you're going to go on your vacation, go to one of these aggregator websites like Google Flights, and what you can do is you can set a price alert and monitor that. And if the flight price gets below your threshold that you've built into your budget, I would say go ahead and pull the trigger and book, because then you're going to have peace of mind that airfare is not going to inflate above what you were willing to pay.
Absolutely. I am so proud of myself because I have used this feature. So I'm like,
Yes.
woo, I'm ahead of the game. Okay. However, we could all use a lesson when it comes to dealing with delays without spiraling. What are your tips on that?
The first thing that you should do is realize that everybody around you has a camera on them because of our phones. So it's best not to go viral and make yourself, famous for all the wrong reasons on social media. But for me, the best way to avoid a spiral is to get really familiar with the airline's app and with their network, because if there's a delay and that's going to cause you to miss a connection, if you know how to search for alternative flights and you know the other hubs and maybe there's a different connection that you can take and you have that all mapped out when you go up to the gate agent, if you have a proactive plan, it's a lot easier for them to rebook you, get you put on a different flight, rather than just melting down and being a statistic that shows up on the socials.
Yeah, you don't want that. And why do you think travel stress makes people irrational?
I think it has to do with being put in confined spaces, and everyone thinks that it's their journey. You look at yourself like, oh, it's a main character energy. And really, we're all in this mess together. And I found that if I treat air travel as a good people watching event, it definitely lightens the mood. And some of the chaos that you see is actually very, very entertaining.
That's true. Okay, so what do frequent flyers do differently during peak chaos?
I think it goes back to that being proactive. I fly at least 2, 3, sometimes 4 segments a week. I fly one particular airline more than the other, so I know exactly where their network is. I know where there might be another connection that I can take to get me to my final destination. I think becoming familiar with that is really not that difficult. Most airlines have, call it 4 or 5 main hubs. If you can look at the flight board and see, hey, there's this amount of flights that are taking off after mine going to a different destination, go ahead and see if there's flights from that particular city. Like, let's say you're going from Las Vegas to Atlanta and you had a connection in Dallas and you were flying American. Well, there might be a connection through Phoenix. There might be one through Charlotte. Go ahead and look at those. And again, when you go to the gate agent, I would say be super kind, be super gracious, be humble, and that'll go a long way to getting you to where you want to go.
And when you're talking about that kind of flexibility during peak chaos, you also want to pack in a way that represents that, right? So you don't lose your stuff.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is when it's hot outside, we assume that the airport and the plane is going to be hot, and vice versa in the winter, and that's never the case. So always make sure that you have a layers that you'll be comfortable, whether you take off the extra layer or you need to put it on because of the major AC. But one thing that I always advise is to keep 24 hours worth of clothing, toiletries, chargers, you name it, on you in a bag that you can put underneath the seat.
Smart.
So that way, if there is any issues with your lost luggage, you've at least got a day's worth of items that can get you through that mess.
Right, before you either get reunited with your bag or go out and have to buy new stuff.
Right.
Okay, this is all great advice for the frequent business traveler. I'm a mom and will be traveling with my 2 toddlers soon, so that's a whole different conversation, Brandon.
It is. You know what? Children are not the problem. The adults are always the worst people in the airport, so you should not stress about anything.
Thank you for saying that. Well, thank you so much for all your tips. And where do we buy your book?
It's on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and you can also go to my website, brandonblewett.com.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Safe travels.